Moscow, thanks for joining us on RT International. We have your latest world headlines. US Central Command has confirmed it carried out a deadly airstrike in Syria's Idlib province. RT's Lizzie Phelan has the latest.
First, the Americans were saying that they had targeted al-Qaeda militants in the Idlib area, and it seems that they were trying to, or they were avoiding admitting to being responsible for this strike where over 40 civilians have been confirmed killed. But later, when pictures were coming out online showing the fragments of a Hellfire missile, which is used by the US, then CENTCOM confirmed that they were actually behind the strike in the Al-Jina area in West Aleppo. They say, however, that they didn't directly hit a mosque. However, opposition sources online are saying that the mosque was directly hit, this mosque where there was a big gathering of people last night. The opposition say that every Thursday in the evening, fighters from several opposition factions meet in this mosque. Now, opposition sources also say that there was two strikes. The first strike took place while people were actually inside the mosque. After that strike, people came out. Then there was a second strike, which hit those people as they were coming out of the mosque. The White Helmets, of course, which has received millions of dollars of funding from the U.S. government, so-called first responders, humanitarian aid workers, say that they so far have pulled out 57 bodies, but they're still looking for more bodies under the rubble, and there's more than 150 injured. They also say that before that strike took place, they were observing US-led coalition aircraft hovering over the area. Now, the US says that it will investigate these allegations of civilian casualties, so we will, of course, be following this story very closely.
And after this strike, numerous media outlets accused Russia. Some of them blamed Moscow right in the headline. Others were more careful, deciding to remind readers about accusations of Syrian and Russian strikes from the past, right under the completely different subtitle, US air raids. And the false claims were not even fixed even after CENTCOM's statement. All right, let's cross live now to Martin Jay, an award-winning journalist focusing on the Middle East, joining us live here on RT International. Good to see you today, Martin. Thanks for joining us on the program here. Let's just address the media coverage very, very quickly. CNN headlines saying US denies bombing mosque, but then does admit to bombing the building next to it. If I show the BBC report on this, the BBC report says 42 civilians are killed in a mass bombing campaign, and then says Russian jets are in the region dropping bombs there. But only after mentioning Russian jets does the BBC say that the US admitted it carried out the airstrike. What kind of journalism at the end of the day is this, Mr. Jay?
Call centre journalism, I call it. I mean, if you look at particularly CNN's record in Syria, it's close to diabolical. There was an individual called Danny, who was a fake news operator employed by CNN to conduct interviews, and we realized later on that he was actually paid by the extremists in Syria. So that's the record of CNN. The BBC isn't that much better. Look, I think, Rory, there's a bigger story here, which is that, you know, we look at the Syria battlefield and the peace talks going on in Kazakhstan and in Switzerland, and we wonder why, after so many years now, we're not making any headway at all. One of the reasons why is because the powerful superpowers behind these talks, Russia and America, Iran and Turkey, those officials don't have all the information at their disposal, not only of the political process that's going on, but also of the battlefield itself. We seem to be indulging ourselves in a quagmire of fake news now coming out from Syria. So I think that's it's inevitable when you look at the history and how some of these mainstream organisations get their news. You know, if you look at some of these reports today, perhaps those reports were immediately fed to BBC and CNN by AFP, who seem to be one of the first off the mark. But look closer and look more deeply at where those reports are coming from, and you'll find a Syrian organisation in the UK, which is one individual who is anti-Assad and who is paid by the European Union and the British government to essentially cultivate and propagate fake news about the day-to-day abominations on the battlefield in Syria.
So the fake news issues that you bring up, certainly something that the new President Donald Trump has been trying to attack in a very, very big way, calling the media the enemy of the people. When it comes to this strike on a mosque, though, in this part of northern Syria, the U.S. bomb strike there, CENTCOM saying it will look into the reports of civilian casualties. We're looking at vast numbers of casualties now. How balanced do you think the investigation could be if CENTCOM is actually investigating itself?
It can't be, of course it can't be balanced at all, you know, and this is one of the real issues is we don't have a self-censorship, we don't have organisations which can be objective about any of the information that's coming from the Syrian battlefield. I mean, most of this information, the knee-jerk reaction, which is what the journalists need very quickly to verify some of these stories, is coming from activists. And I think this is a big part of the problem. You know, going back to this organisation in the UK, which is funded by the EU, you know, I know journalists who work at AFP who are incredibly frustrated, who are depressed by the fact that they have to habitually report almost verbatim some of the information that's being spoon-fed to them on a day-to-day basis from the battlefield. So we're a long, long way from getting any kind of self-censorship, anything that we can call objective reporting. And, you know, the EU has a big role in this to play. You know, I mean, we seem to forget that the epicenter of fake news is Brussels. And, you know, I was in Brussels for 11 years, and I can tell you that almost every day something like 800 or 900 journalists go to the European Commission press briefings every day and more or less write up the material verbatim which is handed to them by some press officials there who write the press releases every single day without verification, without endorsing, without fact-checking. And this is part of what's been going on now today. You know, we need better verification. We need a machine, a process of some sort, maybe an on-screen logo, if you like, that this information was brought to you by an organisation which is paid by the EU, for example. Something like that.
As you say, Mr. Jay, there are so many journalists these days that, as you say, from the AFP especially, that are exasperated as well with well, stories being handed to them and them being expected to then put it out for mass consumption. Martin Jay, award-winning journalist focusing on Middle East coverage, thank you very, very much for your time and your insight on RT International today. Thank you.